hello. Yes, you're healed. Yes, and you, everyone, bless you, you're healed.
Jesus, by what authority are you doing these things?
Oh no. Jesus, please don't. Jesus, don't do it.
By whose authority do you do these things?
Oh my gosh, every time!
Why don't we see it coming?
It seems so obvious. This is not working. We need to kill this guy or something.
What's up, Amplify students, and welcome to another night of Amplify Online. I think I'm getting tired of saying that. I know you're getting tired of watching that. So what if we changed it next week? What if we, instead of saying Amplify Online, what if we had Amplify in person? That's right, next week, guys, we are here, all right? There's only a couple things different. All right, so there's going to be some rules that we have to follow and some things that we have to do. But first of all, Wednesday night, July the 8th, Wednesday night, middle school. That's still 7th and 8th graders. If you're a rising 9th grader, you're still considered 8th grade right now. So make sure you're here next Wednesday. Thursday, high schoolers, all of you, 9th through 12th, you will be here for Amplify in person or Amplify students. I don't even know what to call it now because we've been doing it online for so long, right? All right, again, this is a 1 week only. We're doing a test run to see kind of what it feels like, what it looks like. Same thing our church as a whole did a couple weeks ago. This is our test run to see about it. And then we will see what goes as follows. So the week after next, we'll be back online for a few more weeks, but then hopefully by the end of July, 1st of August, we can be back in person for a couple weeks. So that's exciting news. Next week, we get to see each other in person. Don't miss it. You want to be here. There will be some guidelines. We'll have some hand sanitizer stations set up. You will be required to wear a mask. So no exceptions. You will have to wear a mask, all right? So that is part of that. You should have gotten an email this week, kind of giving you some guidelines of that. But man, just to be able to get together and see each other will be amazing, and that's what we're looking forward to. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. So today, let's start like we start every single Thursday with some worship. All right, I want you to worship with me. Man, isn't it great that we can worship even though we're not together? We can still worship. Man, it never gets old. Every single week, it's amazing. It's awesome. All right, so tonight we're diving in. We're finishing chapter 11 of John. I'm excited about this. There's so much information here that we're going to be talking about. Remember, if you remember 2 weeks ago, we started chapter 11. We talked about Lazarus being raised from the dead and Jesus doing that miraculous sign and that miracle that he did. And so today we're going to kind of look at the second part of this after this. And the title of the kind of the scripture is The Plot to Kill Jesus. All right. So we're getting close to Jesus' life coming to an end. But we're not quite there yet. But we're going to look into this. So John chapter 11, starting with verse 45. All right. Starting with verse 45, it says this: many of the people who were with Mary believed in Jesus when they saw this happen. Many believed. So Jesus raised Lazarus from the grave. He was dead. Remember that? He was dead for 4 days. Jesus showed up, come out of the grave, Lazarus, right? And people believed. People were amazed that he did that and he could do that. And people believed in Jesus. And so I want to ask you a question. Do you believe? Like seriously, like we don't get to see that. We don't get to see it in person, but like we get to read about it and we get to see what has been written. And do you believe that Jesus did that? Do you believe in him? Do you believe that what is written is true? But can you imagine watching that? Because here's the thing, people actually watched that and still didn't believe. And so for me, I would hope that I would see that and I would say, man, like, Jesus just raised someone from the dead. I hope I would believe, and I believe that I would, because I believe just by reading it and studying it. And so he continues, verse 46. But some went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Well, that's interesting. Why are they running to the Pharisees and telling them, Jesus raised someone from the dead? And see, this is what's going on, okay? The Pharisees are these religious leaders. They want to control everything, and so they want to be the smartest people. They want to be the people that people come to and worship and all of this fun stuff. And so when something's out of the norm, they want to know about it. And so they've trained the people that they're teaching. They've trained them, almost like brainwashed them to like, hey, if something's out of the ordinary, like if this guy does something weird, you come tell us. We need to know. And this is what's going on. They went and told them. In verse 47, then the leading priests and the Pharisees called the high council, also known as the Sanhedrin, together. What are we going to do? They asked each other. This man certainly performs many miraculous. Ain't that what is that? Miraculous. It's a Spanish word for, what is that, Wednesday? I don't know. This man certainly performs many miraculous signs. If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him. Then the Roman army will come and destroy both our temple and our nation. So let's pause right there. Let's look at this for a few moments. So they find out that Jesus rose someone from the dead, and they call it these signs, and they're upset. And so the Sanhedrin, or the high council, is the highest judicial body in Israel, and they had both political and spiritual power, but served under Roman authority. And for them, the power and popularity of Jesus was a significant problem. They had a problem with Jesus. I don't know why, but they had a problem with Jesus. They accepted the eyewitness testimony as true, and then went about trying to figure out how to stop Jesus. They couldn't bear the thought of a man running loose who could heal people and raise people from the dead. They didn't protest the truth of the healing. They acknowledged Jesus was super and has supernatural power to raise the dead and heal the sick. But even the word choice is remarkable. Look at this. They use the word signs, which means an event which is regarded as having some special meaning, something which points to a reality with even something greater significance. They had knowledge that the works of Jesus are so phenomenal that they must point to something more significant. Yet they refused to ask what the works pointed to. And we know what they pointed to. We know that through Jesus, everything was pointing to God. Everything was to see the glory of God. And so everything that he did pointed to God. And see, they didn't see that. They refused to ask what the works pointed to. These religious leaders see all of these signs and fail to consider what is being presented. And what's being presented? That Jesus is the Messiah. He is who he says he is. And so how do we explain their failure to see this truth? And see, the answer is not lack of information. We've talked about this. In chapter 9, Jesus literally laid out everything he had done, and then he said, you are blinded by your spiritual blindness. They were spiritually blinded by their sin. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. He told them they were spiritually blinded by their sin. And so their unbelief is even more surprising when you consider their career, their livelihood of these men. They each had years, possibly even decades, of religious service. These were supposed to be the most spiritual men in the nation. And if we could have been present in their meetings, we would have been impressed. Like we would have walked in and they would have opened up in prayer and we're like, man, that's a good prayer. Like we would have been impressed by their robes and all of this stuff because this is what they are. All of this religion and all of this biblical knowledge were theirs, and they were unable to look at Jesus and see the glory of God's Son standing right in front of them. And that's why it's so important that you can be religious, but also lost. You can memorize Scripture and still be ignorant of its truth. You can say all the right things, but have a heart that has not been transformed by the power of Jesus Christ. See, the religious leaders, their primary concern was maintaining control. Do you know someone in your life that's always trying to control you? That even when you're doing the right thing, they're still trying to control you. Maybe saying that it was wrong or justifying their actions or whatever it is. You know people like that. And see, Jesus threatened their position and influence. If people continued to believe in Jesus was the Messiah, then Rome would sweep in and destroy and take away their leaders' authority. They would lose all of this. They would lose their position and their freedoms. Their concern wasn't for the people, but for themselves. They were focused on maintaining their own position of power. And we see in them a clear and striking picture of the self-centeredness of what we call empty religion. Well, Jason, what is empty religion? Empty religion is practiced by people who come to church, they give money, they say and do the right things, and are moral but have no relationship with Jesus Christ. And it is always revealed by a person's focus. If someone has been truly converted and following Jesus, this is his focus. His first focus is always on Jesus. His second focus is on other people. And finally, last, his focus on himself. But empty religion is focused first on me. It's based on my effort. It's about maintaining my good works. It's primary concern with my blessings and my safety. Ultimately, I'm the one who receives the praise, and it looks good because I'm the one that made the good choices. It's on me. And see, a similar error is obvious when we begin to evaluate spiritual realities about how we will be affected. This is how it all starts, guys. See, their concern wasn't whether Jesus was right or good, but how his actions would affect them. They didn't look that he was healing people and it was good for those people. They were like, well, this guy's going to destroy us. We've got to do something about it. Their concern wasn't whether Jesus was right or good, but how his actions would affect them. And see, this is a dangerous path to get on, but one we so easily travel. When our decisions are not based on clear biblical standards of holiness, but on how they will affect our own comfort and convenience, then we are committing the error of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Whereas they're doing the same thing they're doing. Their fear of loss of influence and loss of income pushed them to disobeying God's will for their life. They were fearful. They were afraid. And so you will see this your whole entire life. You will come into this. Do not get dragged down by this. Your workplace will do this. Your friends will do this. And yes, let me tell you, it even happens in church. Stand up for what is right, even if it takes you outside your comfort zone. Don't let the fear of loss of influence or income push you away from God's will. God's got a plan for you, and you've got to hold to it. Guys, these guys, allow fear to not allow them to distract or fuzzy up their mind and their thinking, so that when Jesus, the Messiah, God himself, was standing right in front of them, they had a problem. You know why they had a problem? Because it took them outside their comfort zone. So they made decisions that would benefit them, not anybody else. Guys, we as believers cannot do that. Man, where we are today in the world is a prime example. How many times have we've argued with people because we don't think the same way they do? But maybe just once, just one time, would you be willing to just listen to them instead of having your own mindset already made up? Because it doesn't benefit you? We live in a world that we're seeing the same thing happen today that happened years ago. It's all about us, right? It's about my comfort, about my influence, about my income. If it doesn't benefit me, I'm not doing it. And take a moment. This world, not about me and you. It's not. It's about the one true God. And if anything, our focus has to be on Him every single moment. First God, then others, and then ourselves. And then verse 49, it says, Caiaphas, who was the high priest at that time, said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't realize that it's better for you that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed." I love that statement. We're going to get into it, but it says, do you not realize that it's better for you? Again, looking at himself rather than others. And so in response to their problems, Caiaphas, the high priest, offers a plan. Jesus was a problem, and problems need to be eliminated. So with this cunning and coldness, this cold heart, the high priest calls for Jesus' death. His statement reveals another reality of religion. See, religion is self-centered and fear-motivated. And it will always lead to a spiritual world ratification. Since it's not rooted in the unchanging grace of God, it will waver based on circumstances. See, this is what happens. We will make decisions based on our own perception of what benefits us, what we think keeps us in God's favor. Ultimately, religion is our attempt to maintain our position. Remember, we live in the world. It's all about position. It's about how high you can get on the ladder. And so what we will do is we will do things in our lives thinking or justifying them to stay in our position. See, it's rooted in what we believe others think about us and what we believe God thinks about us. So we begin to play this game, and we look at an action that is wrong, and we begin to justify why it's really not that bad. You ever done that? I have. I've sinned or I've done something, and I justify it to try to make myself feel good or to make myself feel like I need to stay in this position. What we're doing is coming out with a defense for our action. We're justifying ourselves. Christians, our justification doesn't rest on us. It can't. Our justification comes through Jesus and Him alone. So what Caiaphas is doing here is he's self-justification. The religious leaders wanted to kill an innocent man. Because why? Because it benefited them. See, it was a political convenience, but they needed to come up with some type of justification. If they could just justify it, then God, somehow in their own thinking, could not hold it against them. And see, on the scale of good and bad, their good motives would outweigh the evil of the actual deed that they're doing. Caiaphas' speech must have been very convincing. His statement must have been great because they made plans to kill Jesus. He makes this statement to benefit them, and he convinced them, like, well, we must kill this guy. And they make plans. See, it's gone beyond an impulsive attempt to stone Jesus. We've seen that in previous chapters. And it's become premeditated murder. See, however, Jesus avoided them until the appropriate time. We will see, we know what happens. We know why Jesus died. And see, he avoided them until the appropriate time, and he would not die because of the notion and wishes of the religious establishment. His death was not the tragic death of a religious zealot. See, he would die at the time chosen by his Father. His life would not be taken from him, but he would willingly sacrifice it. Verse 51, he continues, he says, he did not say this on his own. That statement that he said about rather than killing one person rather than a nation, he did not say this on his own. As high priest at that time, he was led to prophesy that Jesus would die for the entire nation. And not only for that nation, but to bring together and unite all the children of God scattered around the world. Man, he didn't even know he was prophesying. I love that John comes back because John's writing the book of John years later. And so when the high priest says this, he didn't realize that. He was trying to make a plan. But John realized that what he actually said was going to come true for Jesus' life. And he just didn't realize it. It's kind of ironic. The irony in that statement is kind of cool. In verse 53, so from that time on, the Jewish leaders began to plot Jesus' death. They began to plot Jesus' death. Why? For their selfish ambition, because they're selfish and they want power and they're afraid. They're fearful. And as a result, Jesus stopped his public ministry among the people and left Jerusalem. He went to a place near the wilderness, to the village of Ephraim, and stayed there with his disciples. It was now almost time for the Jewish Passover celebration, and many people from all over the country arrived in Jerusalem several days early so they could go through the purification ceremony before Passover began. They kept looking for Jesus, but as they stood around in the temple, they said to each other, "What do you think? Do you think he will come for the Passover? Will he come?" Meanwhile, the leading priests and the Pharisees had publicly ordered that anyone seeing Jesus must report it immediately so they could arrest him. Guys, we're getting ready to head into the final week of Jesus' life, leading up to the crucifixion. They're starting to gather at Passover. And so right now, the Pharisees, the leaders, they have kind of like a bounty out for Jesus. The minute you see him, let us know. We need to know. And then everybody around is talking and whispering, will he come? Because here's the thing. Jesus was a Jew. He's a practicing Jew, so they were required to come to Passover. And so the people were talking, they're asking, like, you think he will come? They were watching him to see if he would be obedient to what he was supposed to do. And so we'll come back to this leading up to the Passover in a couple weeks and talk about this. But here's the deal, guys. How are we living our lives right now? How are you living your life? Are you living with God-centered? If you're focused on God, or are you living self-centered in an empty religion? What is your focus? Is your focus yourself? Or is it God and people around you? Who are you trying to please? Who are you trying to gain? What are you trying to gain? Are you self-centered with an empty religion? Or are you living for God and your focus is on Him at all times? And then, are we trying to believe what others think about us and what God thinks about us? Are we acting and doing because how it will affect us? Are we trying to get ahead? Are we trying to impress someone? How are you living? Man, when you read the gospel, when you read what Jesus teaches, it's never about us. It's never about us, me. It's never about me. It's always about God. We are called to sacrifice ourselves. Do you know what sacrifice means? It's to put someone else in front of you. To lay down your life for them. To do something to help others. Are you willing to put others before you? Or is it all about me? Or is it all about me? What's your focus? Who are you trying to please? Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father God, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for allowing us just to worship you and to dive into your word. God, I pray and I challenge for myself and for others to really ponder and really to check our hearts and see how we are living. To determine whether we're living for ourselves or we're living for you. Are we putting you first and others second and then ourselves third, or are we putting us first and everybody else to the side? Are we becoming the religious leaders that we read about in the New Testament that are so focused on religion and position and power and everything else that we forget what our purpose is for? God, you tell us to love people. You tell us to sacrifice for others. Are we doing it? Or are we just living for ourselves? God, I pray that you would challenge us. You would spark this in our hearts and in our minds to see differently, to see as you see. God, we love you, we honor you, and we thank you for everything that you do for us and continue to do for us in our lives. God, we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.